So, all right, good evening, everybody. Let's call this meeting to order on November 9th of the Budget Committee meeting. And first of all, I'd like to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Quickly, let's do some introductions. If you want to start, John.
Jen Byron.
Les Thompson.
Erin Maskwa.
Mishka Haddock, Chair.
Tony Dumas, Selectman.
Suzanne Eden.
Sue Levinson, School Board.
Peter White.
All right, and joining us from the school board.
Chris Souza, Principal of Nottingham School.
Bob Godowski, Superintendent of Schools.
Marjorie Whitmore, Business Administrator.
Jackie Snow, School Board.
All right, thank you for all being here. We want to just jump right into the school draft and not bore you with the other stuff that we're going to do later. So we've kind of flipped that schedule around from the past. So if you want to lead us there and show us the changes for this year, that would be great.
We were just going to start off with Jackie was going to say a few words about our process at this point. But this is our very first draft, and so we hope you'll help us through it as we work through developing it further. It's a little bit high right now, we're aware of that. So, and here's the team, so we're looking forward to going through this with you this evening.
Great, yeah. So thank you. We do look forward to discussing and working on this first draft of the budget with the Budget Committee. The school board wants to thank the Budget Committee for their support and also acknowledge the community for the support of the school over the years. So if you were like me when you first received the budget, you probably flipped right to the last page to see how it all ended. But don't worry, how we are starting is not how we plan to end. And as Susan noted in her email to the Budget Committee, we wanted to get all the costs and all the improvements into a draft. So we had all those numbers before us as we started to make decisions and form priorities. The one thing to keep in mind as we go over the budget, Nottingham School has historically spent less to educate our children than the average amount spent in New Hampshire. However, in the last 2 years, we have seen better than average results despite that lower than average spending. Nottingham continues to exceed and beat state averages on standardized tests despite spending less than other districts. And perhaps because of what could be seen as more frugal spending, we are now finding ourselves without certain programs, services, and educational tools that are becoming more common in neighboring districts. So in this budget, you will see additions to support full-day kindergarten, world languages, and math literacy. In addition, the budget includes additional technology purchases, improvements to the library, as well as new furniture, fixtures, and building maintenance and improvements. So the board, collaborating with you folks, we need to prioritize what is needed now, what could possibly be deferred, what should perhaps go on a warrant article. And I think these will be tough choices, as everything that's in this proposed budget will help move Nottingham School forward and help benefit and improve the education of all of our students. So with that, we could turn it over to Dr. Domsky and our school administration, Marjorie, Sue Levinson. We can talk about what's in our wonderful binder, and then we can start to go through the budget page by page, and certainly folks here will jump in if they have more to add with their expertise.
Sure, thank you. First, I'll just take you very quickly through the binder. Obviously, through the tabs, we've got the proposed budget, which is where we're going to spend our time tonight. The default budget, you'll have that for your next go-round. There are still some moving pieces in there. The SAU's got to set their budget. The preschool's got to set the budget. So as soon as those are finalized, we'll give you a final default budget. The revenue statement and financial reports will be coming the next time, as well as the warrant articles. Staff list and salaries, we'll get those to you the next time as well. Health insurance and dental rates, those are already included in here. Some good news with the health insurance, it's a minus 2.4%. Our rates actually went down, so pretty lucky there. The out-of-district placements, you'll see those are already included for your information there. Special ed transportation, we've already got numbers on that piece that's in your binder. The teacher's contract and the paraprofessional collective bargaining agreements are in there. We were in the second year of contracts with them, so you can, actually the first year of contracts with them, so you can see those included in there as well. The enrollment report as it stands of October 1st, as we go through the budget, you'll see the tuition attached to our high school students. We will literally keep an eye on those right up to the last draft of the budget. So as kids move in and move out, we'll adjust it accordingly with that. The SAU budget hasn't been set yet. That's coming on November 27th, so that will be set. The SAU report card also just provides a lot of information, not only for Nottingham, but for the rest of the SAU with Stratford and Northwood as well. So if there's anything that you find either through this meeting or in between meetings, any information that you think would be useful, please just let my office know, and we'll be glad to give you as much information as we can to help you through the budget.
Just one quick thing, in that report card, you can see the results of the Smarter Balance testing and that Jackie had mentioned. So you can actually go through all the grades and see the results, high school and K through, or actually grades 3 through 8.
So with that, I will turn to the proposed budget. And down in the right-hand corner, at the bottom, you can see page 1 of 26. That, when I refer to the page number, that's what I'll be referring to. So I'll take you through page by page. And I know Chris and Marjorie and Jackie will jump in to support some of the areas that need to be identified. At any point in time, if I'm going too fast or too slow, just jump in and let me know. On the first page, you'll see our teacher salaries. And in those lines, we have identified that includes the addition of a world language teacher and a math specialist. Those are two positions that we've included this year. And you can see that line is up $79,701. And that includes all of the collective bargaining agreements too with the teaching staff. Going down a little bit further than that, regular ed, paraprofessional salaries. You can see there's a $40,000 increase there. We have planned for full-day kindergarten going into next year. We've got the teaching staff for it, but we need to add a couple of paraprofessionals. So you'll see that that's identified under the notes along that line, 2 kindergarten-specific paraprofessionals, which accounts for the majority of that increase. Any questions or anything to add on page 1?
I'm sorry, you're getting 2 teachers for 40,000?
Paraprofessionals to support in the kindergarten classroom.
Are they full-time or?
Yes.
Yeah, teacher aides, they'll be in the classroom with the teachers.
We've heard too from our curriculum director, that's pretty commonplace, that for kindergarten to have a paraprofessional with them. In fact, I think he said this is the first district he's been in where they haven't had a paraprofessional in a kindergarten class.
And we had thought that we would have to undergo the expense of putting modulars outside or looking at some sort of building to accommodate it, but when we took a look at the enrollment numbers, we realized that we could do it with the 2 current classrooms that we have, but it would be wise to add those paraprofessionals to support larger class sizes than we're experiencing with 4 half-day units.
So, but that number, the 40,000, is actually for 3 staff members, or is one of these 2 kindergarten also?
Well, that's a $40,000 increase. You'll see the budget is $59,314 right next to it. And that's for 3 regular education paraprofessionals.
Okay, right,
One that's already in the building doing non-special ed type of work.
gotcha.
So just the 2 were added.
2
The
new
one
ones.
is-
Two were added,
one
yes.
has always been there.
Yep. Any other questions on page 1? On page 2, throughout the budget, you'll see health insurance lines. Remember that the health insurance lines do reflect a minus 2.4 decrease in our rates. However, remember that there are different plans that teachers and paraprofessionals can take, whether it's a single, a family, or a 2-person. So the adjustments to the plans, that's why you're not going to see a straight 2.4 reduction on that. So as well as the new staff are figured in there too, the world language and the math specialists as well as the paraprofessionals. So you'll see the health insurance line is up slightly, 23,000, as well as the dental insurance, which is a slight increase there as well. And then corresponding benefits down through that page. I'm trying to see if there's any highlights. I don't see any other highlights on that page.
Dr. Domsky, when the health insurance is projected for the budget, you base it on what folks currently have, but during an open enrollment period, that could change. So certainly it's based on what folks have now, but that could change actually in the year that the budget is for, and I think the cost could vary then.
Right, the best thing we can do is take a snapshot in time, and then when open enrollment comes, obviously if somebody has a life-changing event, whether it's having a baby or getting married or a divorce or whatever it is, then that plan obviously might change.
Do the teachers have to pay a percentage of their health insurance coverage?
They do. I'm trying to remember what.
It's in the contract. I think that it's,
The collective bargaining agreements are in your packet here. I'm trying to remember exactly what
I
they
can look
pay.
it up for you while we go.
They pay a percentage of that.
So while I look that up, that line would have originally had a decrease in it. However, with 4 new additional staff members, 2 teachers and 2 paraprofessionals, I budgeted them at 4 family plans at their rates, whether it be.
Any other questions on page 2?
The answer to your question is on page 12 of the teacher CBA. The district will pay 90% of a single, 80% of a 2-person, and 80% of a full family for teachers.
And that will be for the next 3 years, right? Because that's a 3-year agreement for the teachers.
Okay. Page 3, you start getting into your supplies. You'll see that I'm looking for slight changes here. The art supplies, you'll see, is up $12.50. In addition to the normal supplies, there's a rolled paper rack that is needed there, so that's part of that increase.
No, I'm just kidding.
And
Dr. Gomsky, hold on. Peter, when you chat, all the other audio goes way offline for me, so I can't hear him. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't realize.
Thank you.
My bug.
I'm meaner than Joanna is, so.
Yeah, I've heard that. I'm just kidding.
Believe it.
all set?
Yeah.
And then on page 3, if you look down the bottom, you'll see science supplies up $2,210. Much of that is implementation of the New Hampshire science standards, next generation science standards that are being implemented in the school. So obviously there are other supplies. And the rest of the page are math supplies, health supplies, music. You can see the supply lines that we have.
I know, Dr. Domsky, the board had asked about reading supplies. I think the teachers were using the existing books with the newer program, but then wanted to augment or supplement that. So they want to get some additional materials in for the younger students. Is that correct?
Correct. Kindergarten books are relatively short, as you can imagine, as they're teaching them how to read, and so the students go through them rather quickly. And so there's typically a need to replenish those on a regular basis every 2 years even. And so little literacy kits are specifically designed for grades kindergarten, first grade.
Other questions on 3? Page 4 goes into your classroom workbooks and classroom textbooks. You can see that we've got a $4,000 decrease in classroom workbooks consumables, and a $9,000 increase in textbooks. Some of that's for world language, for putting that in, and you see right under that a decrease in language arts textbooks. So I'll let Chris speak a little bit for the textbook lines.
Yes, we have no major purchases for textbooks coming up, although because of class sizes, we've added $1,000 to the textbook line. To make up for that, as students move in or move up, we have to purchase textbooks to accommodate them. We found that it was prudent this year if we had a little money in that, when you consider a textbook is almost $100, depending on the book they get. In addition to that, there's $8,000 in for world language textbooks, because we've been looking at Spanish being the program that we would probably implement. And again, we're still at the early stages of those conversations with the board. But we've been looking at, say, a K-8 Spanish language piece, what type of materials would we need to implement that? And it would be a variety of resources, from textbooks to periodicals to different types of soft cover books as well.
As you continue down the bottom of page 4, you've got your starting your special ed area. You got your special ed teacher salaries in there. It's 5 special education case managers. You can see a decrease. That's mainly from change of staff from one year to the next. So we saw a decrease in that line. And then the special ed para salaries, you'll see an increase of 30,000. Again, that's implementing the first year of the collective bargaining agreement as well as some staff changes.
I am looking into that line because it seems like a huge decrease, so,
The 68,000.
yes.
And why did you decrease the special ed teachers?
I'm sorry.
Why did you decrease the number of special ed teachers?
We didn't decrease the number of special ed teachers. I thought it was because of staff changings.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
gonna look
That's-
into it when I get back to the
I got
office
you. So you
because
didn't. All right.
that seems like a big decrease unless there were significant changes. Other school districts, we have seen that.
Okay.
As teachers at the top of the step retire, and then we replace them with somebody newer. So sometimes you do see that savings, but that one in Nottingham doesn't seem right to me, so I am gonna review that more before we get to the
We've had
Nottingham
this
school
meeting.
board meeting next week.
Yeah.
Can I write on this if I want?
Of course you can. It's your binder.
Your binder. On page 5, continues the special education. Again, as you start down, the health insurance, you can see up slightly. The retirement, again, is down. That's based off the salaries. If you see a decrease in salary, you're gonna see a decrease in the retirement lines. And then 3/4 of the way down, special education tuition preschool. That's the SAU district-wide preschool that is Northwood, Nottingham, and Stratford. That number is a marker for right now on November 27th. The joint board will set the preschool as well as the SAU budget, so then we'll have a final number for the preschool as well.
And we can certainly bring enrollment counts for the preschool. I know there's a question before the
Yep.
meeting about that as
Yeah,
well.
we can bring those. And down the bottom of the page, special education tuition, non-public elementary. Again, this is all based off of student need. You can see where our students are placed, and if the need is there, that's the corresponding tuition.
Can you address, just the curiosity of, a lot of increase in special education, but special education supplies are dropping in half?
That would be a question for our special education director, but the director, along with the case managers, have gone through this budget, and they've seen the supply lines, and I think they're all set.
Okay.
This is what they've requested.
Okay.
And the supply row would be for Nottingham school, right, whereas the tuition is more to send students out, so that
Correct,
we shouldn't necessarily expect to see them
correct,
grow together.
yes.
I'm sorry, why was that increase so much, 124,000?
That's just based on student need, student placements.
So they work with the students, they develop their IEP, and some students' needs can't be met within the school, so they are placed outside of the school, and then we're subject to whatever fees those happen to be.
So this increase is based on students you have found since last year that need special ed or new enrollees, or?
Either or.
Or needs may change.
Yeah.
Needs may change, existing student needs may change.
As they're identified. Page 6, again, going down through your special education. You see an increase on new equipment, a new interactive whiteboard conversion. And you can see the end of that section, an increase of 109,000, and a good portion of that, if not all of that, is the special ed tuition, non-public elementary, where students are tuitioned out, so.
For that new equipment, do you think we could just clarify that at our next meeting? Because I know we had talked about, we had moved over to projectors because they were more cost-effective, and they actually, you were able to use them just as effectively, so I think we did have a conversation. It may be that the need is not met by the projector, but it would be, I think, a little less.
Sure. We can clarify that now. anything else on page 6 as we go down the bottom, coming into co-curriculars, and that goes on to the next page as well. Page 7, again, your co-curriculars, and then moving into athletics. You can see that our co-curricular lines are fairly static, and then moving into athletics, we've got a slight increase in officials and umpires as the fees go up and the number of games that we have. And then down the bottom of that page, you'll see an $1,100 increase in replacement of athletic uniforms, getting into a cycle and replacing those as we go a little bit every year as well.
I should have probably asked this at our meeting, but on page 7, the first line under elementary athletic salaries, looks like we're down $1,000. Are we getting rid of a sport, or just because of amounts that are being paid, or?
And others, we're not funding sports that haven't been filled for the last, say, 5 or 6 years of cheerleading. So we thought, as opposed to putting it in and the placeholder, since we don't seem to have anybody doing that for a long period of time.
Thank you.
And if you look at the actuals in 15-16 and 16-7, it reflects that too.
Yeah.
Excuse me, didn't the parents used to do bake sales and things for some of these things, or that's?
They still do.
Oh, okay.
They still do, right? I think this is actually paying the coaches as well, right?
Right.
So that line in
Yes.
question was to pay for the coaches' time.
And some of these stipends are also part of the collective bargaining agreement, and those are, they're listed on the back. So when people fill those roles, they have a set rate.
I know, like the uniforms, they used to have, you know, the parents used to get involved and raise money for that stuff, but.
Well, we do have a very supportive PTA that does fund quite a bit of, but we have a system in place for uniforms to cycle through, and next year is soccer, I believe, coming up. We're pretty frugal. We like to, it's very spread out as far as how long uniforms last.
Well, there's players to look good.
Yeah.
On page 8, you move into your guidance area, guidance salaries. You've got 2 full-time guidance counselors there. And again, that reflects the implementation of the collective bargaining agreement. Slight adjustment in health insurance. And then down the bottom, guidance enrichment, we've added an additional $2,000 to that. Do you want to talk about that, Chris?
Yeah, we've had some great successes by bringing in folks, experts in a variety of fields, and having them work and talk to parents as well as staff and students. For instance, we had an internet safety provider last year. We showed teenagers issue along those lines. And so some of that funding, we work in conjunction with the SAU and the other schools, comes out of this line. We also do a lot of team building work. We find, particularly at the middle school level, as we're going in to that 6th grade year or 7th grade year, we really need to work on, you know, anti-bullying and cooperation, and we've had success going to certain ropes courses, whether it be Pinnacle or UNH Brown Center, and this helps fund that.
Can you tell me, when you say success, define that a little bit for me, tell me what that means.
We looking at, particularly in the middle school, we gauge it based on disciplinary referrals around bullying. We look at, through our guidance lessons, our students responding to how they work as far as teamwork goes, what are some of their own personal goals as they have what we create, what's called a legacy project. And so we really, mostly through our guidance curriculum, that we assess how well those programs are working.
Right.
Do you use any cases of incidents, like incident reports of?
Yes, I did. We compare it to our discipline records, et cetera.
Was
A
it
lot
just-
of it is
I'm sorry.
anecdotal. But
Sorry, Mr. Souza.
I said a lot of the reports are anecdotal as well. We have bi-weekly mental health meetings with our administrative staff, our guidance staff, our nurse, et cetera, just to talk about what's going on in the building and how the climate is and the culture of the students, and what we can do to support that. So a lot of that comes out in those meetings as well.
One thing that I noticed, which is very different than when I was in school, guidance was they would help you pick courses or talk about your future, or maybe if you got in trouble, you'd have to go see the guidance counselor. But these guidance counselors are so much more active, you know, in the classrooms and in the curriculum, and it's really, they're out there engaging with the kids on a daily basis.
And we're very fortunate, our guidance counselors are very well connected throughout the state with a variety of programs. So we've actually been able to benefit from that by getting some free programs our way as well. Whether it be a grant funded, or there's one coming up on suicide prevention and understanding that is completely free, because of some of the work that our guidance counselors have done. Our middle school guidance counselor was on the committee that wrote the 504 regulations for the state. So again, it's kind of nice to have that those connections and that support, we've seen it benefit our kids.
Is there a DARE program in place?
We do. We work with Nottingham PD, and they do a great job in 5th grade and 7th grade. As a matter of fact, this year they're going to be implementing a new program called LEAD, which is, really, I think it's been a response to the opioid crisis we have. And we're going to look at that as 8th grade, and that may replace the 7th grade DARE. So we may see, either 5th and 8th grade or 5th grade continue with DARE because that's very successful. But then looking for something a little bit different for those middle school kids. And so we're pretty excited to start that in January.
Do you know if they do it on the high school level?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. You mean,
That's really when they get the peer pressure and they
yeah,
really.
I know that they've got health classes and things like that at the high school, which usually take over that kind of piece for the elementary kids. But I don't know whether they have any formalized DARE program or anything like that.
And do they have a DARE program for the parents? Do you know if there's anything connected with the schools or the police department for the parents?
Well, we had also, not specifically DARE, but the board was really interested in having that outreach to parents, and so we have had Dr. Dawson come in, and while she's not specifically addressing opioids, she was addressing to parents how to work with your kids on executive function skills, so that they're developing that part of those skills as they go along, which helps a lot with not getting involved in some of these things, developing better choices. So,
The parents are in the best position to observe behavioral changes, and they need to know what to look for. And a lot of parents say, I had no idea my kid was involved in drugs and they're ODing on heroin or something. It's like.
And last year, we were very successful, as Susan was mentioning, working with the SAU, bringing in a lot of parent groups. We brought in a program from Plymouth State called Alex's Story, which was specifically about heroin addiction and opioid crisis, and it was extremely powerful.
It was a good turnout
an actual
for that.
student, and I'm up at Wigan.
Yeah.
We had a great crowd.
Great crowd.
We had it in the
yeah.
gymnasium. There was a great Q&A afterwards. Very emotional. And so we've been very successful doing that. We also have Judge Broderick hopefully coming in. We'll talk about mental health, and he's really led the state in a lot of mental health issues that are certainly stems from, because he'll talk about addiction as well through that story. And again, we're having a bit of a focus on the internet and some of the uses that kids have with screens and things. And that's happening, I think, next month or.
Yeah, we've already done one internet safety presentation over in Northwood last year. We've tried to move these parent nights throughout. We've had some in Nottingham, some in Stratford, some in Northwood, and they've been really well received. So our building administration, as well as our guidance counselors, have really done a wonderful job at setting those up, and they've been real successful. On the bottom of page 8, you go into your health. Nurse's salary, you'll see, is down. We had a retirement, so a staff change there. Realized a little bit of a savings, which you can see represented throughout the next page with retirement and FICA and those things down as well. And then at the bottom, excuse me, bottom of page 9, into contracted services. And you'll see ESL is up $18,000. That's based on current needs. We look at the needs of the students and the services they need, and then that's developed, as well as the services that you'll find on the next page, on page 10. You'll see a decrease of $68,000 contracted behavior technician. That service is no longer needed, so obviously that's going to be a savings that's realized in this budget.
And ESL is English Second Language
Correct.
Development.
Correct.
And IEPs are the actual individual plan for the students.
Right.
So for that contracted service for the behavior technician that's no longer needed, what happens if sometime during the year it's found to be assessed that may be needed? How does that work?
If we were to, like anything else in special education or anywhere, if we get students move into the district that have severe needs or special needs, obviously we would have to have an IEP meeting and cover the services that the team feels is appropriate. We have a capital reserve for special education if we need to. So that's something that we're putting away to make sure that if we get those types of situations in the middle of the year, that we're ready for that.
That balance right now is about 103, I think.
103,000,
Right. That's what I gave you today, it must be right.
You have in front of you, Marjorie. And Mr. Rooney has indicated that is the desired amount for a district of our size, to have that amount in that capital reserve, which would be there for emergencies or unforeseen contingencies.
Right. So we think we're covered there.
Also on page 10, you'll see your speech services. And then going down to the page, starting your improvement of instruction, curriculum development. You'll see curriculum development money and some other professional development money on the next page. We've seen great success with the curriculum development, with the staff participating in curriculum development, not only during the year, but during the summertime as well. You want to speak to that a little bit, Chris?
Absolutely. During the school year, our teachers spend a tremendous amount of time honing their instruction and assessment skills. In the summertime, it's a great opportunity for us to access all that they've learned by doing that, to have them hone our curriculum. They've, in the summertime, taken time to write curriculum, to combine units, to learn more about technology, and we've had almost every single teacher avail themselves. We've not only used all of these funds that we get every year, but we've tapped into other grant funds to support that as well. Our building is just as busy in the summertime as it is in the wintertime, or during the school year when it comes to staff in and out of the building. It's pretty incredible. And with the competency development, the new state regulations, the new state testing, and we continue to work on technology, we're seeing teachers asking, hey, is there anything to help me get better at this, or is there something I can look for to this, or hey, I'd love to work with the technologists to see if we can do some integration and plan some lessons. And the summertime is great. And quite frankly, we throw them a bit of a modest token in a sense for the amount of work we get. They'll come in for 3 hours, we pay them for 3 hours, but they're spending 6 hours in the building, and then they're going back home and working on it, and through technology themselves continue to connect. So it's great that we reinforce this. I think it surely shows them that we treat them as professionals, but we get huge bang for the buck. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons we've seen some of the rise in our assessment scores, but also in the diversity of instruction that we see going on in the building.
Thank you, and again, it continues on page 11. Course tuition reimbursement, staff development workshops, those are contractual obligations, and you can read that in the collective bargaining agreement. And we've tried to get those a little bit more in line with the actuals, adding $5,000 to the course tuition reimbursement. So we've got our staff that are very eager to continue their growth as professionals, which is pretty exciting. Anything else on page 11? Page 12 moves into your curriculum development, curriculum director, high school liaison salary. You'll see that there's a 3% marker put in for people that are not on the collective bargaining agreement, your curriculum director, your principal, assistant principal, and that's a 3% marker. It's up to 3% based on evaluations and things at the end of the year. You can see on page 12 all of the curriculum director health insurance is down slightly. Everything else on that page again is fairly static, going down to the last line, which is librarian, which kicks it off to page 13, but that's all based on the collective bargaining agreement. Page 13 is your librarian. You'll see that there's an increase in health insurance that just represents the plan that she has presently. An increase there. Down the bottom of that, you'll see that there's an $8,479 increase on new equipment. You want to talk to that, Chris?
Sure. We have in the last couple of years hired a new library media specialist. Our current library media specialist has certifications in technology integration as well as reading, as well as library media certifications. So she's really looking at taking our library and really transforming it to be a much more of a media center, something where we can have students being in K-8 of all ages find some use in. Currently, she does a lot of work working with the kindergarten and first grade students, teaching them how to read and supporting those programs. She's been looking at developing something for the older students as well. And one of the things that we've been looking at is this learning commons model. When you think of a traditional library media center, it's a traditional library, it's very books, very research based, whereas a learning commons model is about flexible spaces within the library to work collaboratively. as well as do the other research. So we're looking at enhancing our current media center by providing the technology that we need to do that, which in this case, we're looking for Chromebook carts as well as a 3D printer. Oftentimes, part of that place, you hear the words makerspace, which doesn't always have to be technology. Just areas in the library where kids can build things, sometimes out of cardboard, sometimes using technology, sometimes combining both. So we're looking for some you'll see later in the budget, some requests for furniture to help us do that too, to create movable spaces within the library.
And this was actually discussed a bit last year, but didn't really make it into some of the final phases of the budget. I believe on December 7th, 6th or 7th at our next meeting in December, the librarian will be coming and giving a presentation to the school board with Mr. Souza about this whole concept, so you can understand a bit more about it. And later you'll see, I think, an air conditioner for the library too in the budget. So there's quite a bit about the library, so we want to make sure we really understand it, understand the benefit, the impact, and how it could be costed or where it might fit or fall.
Their use of video games as learning techniques in the library, in a classroom, or in the schools?
There are a lot of, quite a bit of game-like programs that are out there, particularly at the younger grades. It's great to see that as a motivational piece. Math Blaster, for instance, is one of them where you're actually doing equations as bubbles go up and you're blasting them. So we see some of that use, but quite frankly, we're seeing the technology is so sophisticated that the students are using it to turn in work to teachers, to collaborate with the staff members on projects or with each other on projects. So yeah, the gaming is certainly part of it because it certainly is a motivator, it gets kids' attention, but it's much more than that. I think, as I mentioned, a couple of years ago around technology, it's no longer one more thing we add to the plate for teachers and kids, it is the plate.
Of course, they spend so much time in their games, and the things they have at home are violent, and they're building into our culture of violence, which needs to be addressed somehow. And I'm not raising that question for us to solve tonight, but if schools can give them healthy games they can play, get them away from these violent games, it wouldn't hurt.
And I will say, if I may, because there's more around technology in the budget, we are trying to have a healthy balance and not use screens to sit, that our kids are just in front of screens all day long. There might be one screen where they're actually talking about, okay, great, let's now put it into the computer. So, yeah, we realize that there has to be a balance of that.
And Chris referred to the furniture. If you turn to the top of page 14, that's the furniture for the library as well that he just spoke about. On page 14, you're moving into your computer-assisted instruction, and you'll see that we've got an increase of $12,000 for internet access, new equipment's up $35,000, and replaced equipment. So I'll ask Chris to speak to the whole page here.
Sure. I'll start with the internet access. So currently we have a bandwidth of 30 megabytes per second, which for our current needs is fine. We have a one-to-one technology program for 7th and 8th grade. Each student has a small Chromebook, and then we have several carts of Chromebooks and other technology devices throughout the building. They use different grade levels. They all need to log on to the internet, and at 30 megabytes, we've had every single student who has a laptop, the one-to-one piece, as well as a couple of classrooms on the internet, and we were still downloading music as a test, and we're able to do it. So 30 megabytes works fine for our current status. If we're going to grow at all, and quite frankly, we are looking at only growing the amount of technology we have by increasing one-to-one access with students or more Chromebooks, but what we do with that as well. And if we're looking at more video, et cetera, then we're going to want to increase our bandwidth. The next step for us would be at least 50 megabytes per second, but eventually we know we're going to want to get to the 100 bytes per second, probably within 2 years at the most. So we'd like to expand that. It is a significant jump. We've shopped around for a couple of years looking at, see what this would be. This is not a new thing for us. As part of our technology plan, we knew it was coming, but the providers have seen that coming, so the prices have jumped substantially. So it's a $14,000 a year fee for the 100 megabytes per second, which will be what we need, and that will take care of us for a long time to come. So that is a rather important piece for us to upgrade on, to allow that connectivity for all the students in the building.
So it's $14,000 a year, and that's not a fixed cost. That's an ongoing every year cost.
Correct.
to go from 30 to 100. Are you changing providers in doing this?
I don't believe so, no.
And just out of curiosity, who is your provider?
We go through Fairpoint.
Okay. I didn't even know they had that. Okay.
I mean, the choices are Fairpoint or Comcast, right? Are there other options, or?
I'm not sure.
I didn't know Fairpoint had 100 megabytes per second.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure you've looked at it, you just mentioned the different levels of service, meaning jumping to 50 megabytes versus, the current 30, and then, stair-stepping it up that way. Any reason you're going straight to 100 versus stair-stepping it and doing it as a growth process as you increase your technology use and needs at the school?
So the staired process would be to go to 50, then 100. According to some national standards, there was a recent article in a couple of magazine, and then of course on NPR, and identified Nottingham School as being a school that was slow and under par, for lack of a better term, for technology networking. And while I respectfully disagree that the practicality of what we're doing is fine for where we're at, we do know we're going to need to jump. Their recommendation was 51 megabytes per second at a minimum. To go to the 50 megabytes per second is $9,000. So it is a $5,000 savings, knowing that the next year we would definitely have to probably go to the 100. So we just said at this point in time, for the nominal savings we are, let's run the new fiber optics that we would need and begin looking at that, and not have to worry about whether or not we're balancing the use of technology in the building.
Okay.
And Fairpoint is, they control the lines. I'll have to look into more as far as who actually, and making sure the connectivity is there. There might be another vendor involved.
And all the infrastructure within the school itself is set to accept, so once you open up this bandwidth with Fairpoint, and you get the 100 megabits, then everything else on campus is set up to deal with that, so the Wi-Fi is all squared away and...
For the most part, but there's some other pieces in here
Okay.
that'll support that. We are actually, we are looking at upgrading some of our wireless hubs. We did a lot of the infrastructure upgrades last year and in the previous year. So we have new AeroHive smart hubs. We've had great success. There's a lot of successful use of those on the seacoast. We went and did a lot of shopping comparisons before purchasing those. So we do want to add a few more of those, the wireless hubs. But also we have a new server in here, as well as our new firewall. A firewall is an actual computer that helps us with our antivirus and any other protections. And so as we go and are going to increase our connectivity, we need to upgrade those pieces as well. Those are our must-haves as we move.
Just a follow-up question on that. Say if, so for that $14,100 that is in there to go to 100, if you chose only to go to 50, and then the next year to go the other distance, is it really broken down by 9,000 and then the remaining balance, or are they gonna, because they have to go in there and rework the lines again, is it gonna be?
There's a nominal installation cost as far as
Okay.
the lines we go. We had fiber already run, so it's not going to affect us too badly as far as labor and upkeep. It's really that annual cost that's
Okay.
the big nut for us.
How much outside support did you ultimately get putting the fiber in? Because there's a number of programs that are in place to assist schools in upgrading their internet connectivity. And I looked into one of them and, heard anecdotally that the school turned down support that could have helped pay for this.
Yeah, the supports that were out there that we found, and probably what you're referring to, is about running actual cables and wires, and we have that already done. So we don't need to upgrade our actual fiber.
So that was the nature of their support, was the actual installation, okay, all right.
People were thinking ahead when they did a lot of that work a couple of years ago, so.
E-rate though, are we still looking at E-rate?
We still will be looking at E-rate. E-rate will provide us with equipment, not service, at 50% reimbursement, so we're looking at whatever purchases we get, we can get an E-rate reimbursement back.
Is that gonna go into what kind of equipment, like networking?
Correct.
Infrastructure within the school? Yep, like those new routers you were talking about.
Yeah, we've already begun to notify the state of some of those pieces and put our E-rate application together, so.
Now, how is that gonna position the school? Like Nottingham was one of the bottom 16 schools, in terms of connectivity. How is that gonna place us when all this is in
is completed.
Well, at 100 megabytes, we would be significantly higher than several schools throughout the state. Because that group that put that together said that we would need to be at 51 megabytes per second, so we'd be double what their recommendation
So
would be.
we'll be way beyond that threshold then.
And I actually have, there's been a poll going around the state asking for that to the tech coordinators and looking at that online. And I mean, currently, right now, we're in the bottom third at 30 megabytes, but again, it fulfills our needs completely. To go to 100 would put us in the top third of that in the state.
And get off that list.
And get off that list.
And the equipment, the Chromebooks and the equipment that we're supplying the students is capable of then using that type of bandwidth? Or, I mean, are they up to par in order to tackle that? You know, I'm just wondering, with that bandwidth, I mean, it brings us up a giant step, but are we then able to use that bandwidth? I mean, it's pointless to have it if you can't use it, kind of thing.
Yeah, the beauty of the Chromebooks are that, while certainly over the years, we may see their hardware needs becoming sufficient, you know, a few years from now. But the software system gets updated automatically through Google.
Right.
So it's always going to be current and in line with current, usually your infrastructures or particularly your connectivity with the internet and stuff. So absolutely. I think right now, out of the Chromebooks we have, ballpark, about half of them are first generation of Chromebooks. The only issue we have is that some of them might have a little bit lower RAM, 4 megabytes versus 8 megabytes. But we have seen absolutely no difference right now. You can put them side by side in all the Google applications. It doesn't really, that small change in working RAM doesn't have any effect on the practicality of using them. So I think we're good for quite a while.
Yeah. And I can tell you from a technology standpoint, it's the sheer number of endpoints that are active within the school. You know, as they've added technology over the years, the number of devices in the school that individually have an internet connection has just grown exponentially. You know, and just as a meaningful metric that the tech director could track, if you can track the number of active endpoints in the school versus your average throughput rate, that would give you a sense of how much of your capacity at any given moment that all of the devices is taking up, you know, of your 100 megabits that you'll end up with. And as the years go by and you see the number of endpoints go up, or as they still go up as you move closer to 1-to-1, it's going to tell you, you know, as like when you add the third graders and they all get Chromebooks, and then you see a percentage of change in capacity consumption, that'll tell you how much of your pipeline you're consuming as you continue to add. And you can track that, you can trend it.
And we try to monitor that on a regular basis, actually almost daily. We tend to see our spikes in the beginning of the day, in our mornings when everyone's logging on, and we're right up against that 30 megabytes per second. And then once the day gets going, we drop down to anywhere from 18 to 20 of active use. And so, yeah, that's a great idea. I'll talk about the active performance, but I know we do try to keep track of that regularly.
Yeah, I mean, I remember looking at my router 5 years ago, and there were maybe 3 IP addresses on it, and now at any given time, I can go into my router at home, and there's got to be like 30 things attached to it, and I don't even know what half of them are. So.
The nice thing is that the technology's changed so much. These new the wireless hubs we have are smart hubs, and then they all talk to each other.
Yeah.
So they're able to move around. If, I'm too busy, can you go over there? And you can have devices on other sides of the building going through each other's routers to get to the other to get an access point. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's called load balancing, so that no one.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The old load balancing.
Yeah. But yeah, so that one router doesn't get overloaded with an abundance of throughput. Yeah. Good stuff.
So also in the budget, and one of our biggest drivers, of course, has been our one-to-one initiative. And what that means is, it does mean different things at different grade levels for the technology. For instance, a one-to-one in a grade 2 would look very different than a one-to-one in a grade 7. Where we've really started to put the technology in, we purchased Chromebook carts and a bunch of peripherals around that. The Chromebook carts allow access for any grade to use them, and our first graders do use them, and on a regular basis, they're pretty adept at it, actually. But what we've done with the 7th and 8th graders last year, we used mostly grant funds for this, was purchase the 11-inch Chromebooks. They're really nice, Lenovo books. And the students have been able to access tremendous amounts of resources in the classroom and at home with them as well, and can talk to each other and the teacher. So now we're looking at putting that down in the 6th grade. We're in the process of really assessing it more deeply. The success of the 7th and 8th grade, again, anecdotally from the students' perspective and the teachers, it's been a big success. So we want to purchase for the upcoming 6th grade. So I'll have a one-to-one where the students actually have a Chromebook and they get to take it home, bring it back. 6th, 7th, and 8th. We have 7th and 8th now, so we need another bank of them for 6th grade. What we're going to do for 5th grade, 4th grade, et cetera, we're not really sure yet. We're in the process of redoing our tech plan. We're in the final year of it. And this, again, is still part of all those ideas of moving to that one-to-one. But you'll see in there also some funding for Chrome iPad cards, particularly for the younger grades, grade 2, grade 1. The tablets, you mentioned some of the games earlier, but they have a lot more interactive software, and particularly because it is a touch screen, and at that age group, it's wonderful. They still have access to Chromebooks, but this would be an additional peripheral that we'd like to have them use. We have some very excited teachers for that. We look at possibly using some grant funds this year to purchase on a trial basis. So again, that one-to-one may be just having the access. Do we have enough computers so that you can have a classroom set, as opposed to students kind of share and, okay, you get to do it first, then I'll go. You can have everybody online doing that, and teachers can keep track of the students online. They put, okay, everyone press whatever you think is the right answer, and poof, on the screen in front of you, it'll show the entire classroom where they chose and what they learned, etc. Pretty powerful. And then as you go down, you'll see again replacing some tech equipment. Some general upkeep for us is to look at our staff computers. Some of them are 7, 8 years old, and we just recycle them. Occasionally they may move, or we'll break them apart as parts and replace it. Quite frankly, our technology director is really adept at taking old parts and putting them into new ones. We don't often just buy new computers, we can fix them.
Gotta teach the students how to do that.
I'm with you. A little A+ certifications would be great for the kids. And then, of course, the network software. That's for the wireless hubs and our web to school, and of course the antivirus, just so forth.
Thank you. Any other questions on
Sorry.
page 14? Chris gets excited about the technology. Page 15 continues the technology theme, the Director of Technology. We've been very fortunate to have Kevin there for a number of years, and he does a terrific job for us. And then down the bottom of that page, moving into the school board services. You can see that those are remaining the same. School board services continues on page 16. A couple of slight adjustments. Our contracted services attorney, we've reduced that $5,000, just going back to the actuals the last couple of years to try to get that a little bit more in line. And then the GASB 45 compliance, that's added for $3,500. About halfway down the page, you'll see the SAU expenses. Again, that is not a final number on November 27th. The joint board will be meeting for finalizing the SAU budget. So at that point in time, we'll firm that number up for you.
Bob keeps plugging that date, so hopefully we'll maybe get some public there, so.
Come on
Feel free
down.
to come on down and join us.
We'll save you a seat.
We'll start with a public hearing there on that budget. And we're paying 30, are we 38 right now, percent of the?
I think so. I think the budget last time I looked was up maybe less than 2% or so. The SAU budget, it was a small increase, and I
Yeah,
think
there
because
was-
of our number of students and our assessment values, we're
Yep.
taking a bigger portion of that than the other two districts in the SAU.
Right, there's the
There's a
formula.
Yep.
Then at the bottom of page 16, moves into your principal's office. Starts your salaries on page 16, and moves into the rest of the principal's office on page 17. You can see there's a slight increase in insurance, but if you go 2/3 of the way down, you'll see a decrease in health insurance buyout. So that's a wash as far as insurance goes. Questions on page 17? Office of the Principal continues on page 18. And really the only thing of note there is we need a new shredder for the office. So Chris, you want to talk about that a little bit?
And I recognize that price tag, it's one heck of a shredder. But we did some research, and looking at the one we had, we've had it for many, many years. And that's the same name brand. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but the Dahl Professional. And that's the low end of their series of shredders. But when you consider how much paper we have to go through, and we need a shredder that doesn't, like a home shredder might cut it into 7 pieces, and that's great. With the confidential nature of the documents we have that we have to destroy, we need something that does the job and does it quickly and does it well. And so that's why we look for more of a professional series as opposed to going to a Staples and getting a home one. It wouldn't last. And currently the one that we have, we can't find a date, but if Pam can't remember the last time we purchased it, you know it's been there a long time. We have to hold the door shut to make sure it works. So it's on its way out. There's a few pieces here, and so we thought it would be time to have to upgrade that.
So it's a crosshatch shredder? It doesn't just do the straight lines, it does turns it into confetti?
Confetti, yeah.
Those are the really secure ones.
Really secure, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a good one.
Yeah.
This is the,
Look for that on the contract.
yeah, it's because of it's so secure, I can't really tell you any more than that.
What about contracted services as far as like, Iron Mountain or whatever, not Iron Mountain, but there's so many of these shredding services out there, and the medical offices use them constantly.
Yeah, we talked about doing that. We are still looking into them. The issue we found anecdotally through asking, for instance, our curriculum director and looking at their past records and other principals was that the storage, because they become cost prohibitive when they come twice a week or even weekly. So then you have to store all the shredded materials, or you have to store all the paper materials you want shredded. And where do you keep these documents that are incredibly confidential under lock and key? Well, before they come and get them, they give you these big barrels that are padlocked, and they're rather good size.
Yeah, they're like 55 or 60 gallon trash cans.
Yeah. Ideally, I would love to get in that direction. Currently, we don't have storage for that.
Okay.
And you've been to our buildings, and you know that we've turned closets and storage into classrooms. And so that was our biggest concern, is what do we do with that?
So, okay,
We don't keep them outside. After we shred, it goes into the recycle bins outdoors.
right. I'm just wondering, like, I don't know how big the unit is, so I'm just curious to know how often is it getting emptied and that kind of thing. And I know, Suzanne, you see these shredding services.
And we're in the middle of
with the
negotiating with another one, and we have them come once a month. So you go downstairs to put paper in, and it's either completely full and overflowing, and
Okay.
budget-wise,
So it does
it's-
become an issue.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that was our big concern around that. But if you have, we're still looking into it.
Okay.
That concludes the Office of the Principal. Moving into the operation of the plant at the bottom of 18. Any questions on 18? Page 19 continues your maintenance. You see an increase in health insurance, basically a change in plans and staffing. Same correspondence with the corresponding line for retirement, up a little bit, again, with the change in staff. Lawn care is up $1,500. A lot of that is the $1,600 we put in for the fertilization and the maintenance of the soccer field, to keep that improving. I think probably most of you have been by the school. If you haven't been by the school, we've got a new field, which is in front of the playground, that was cleared and seeded and provides us a lot more room for our students, as well as a new playground that was put in place this summer. So a lot of work on that, and it's a really nice area for our children now.
And a lot of community members volunteered to make all of that happen. And our PTA also was very generous.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. It was fun.
Yeah, that really was a group effort to get that done.
Quick question, you don't know if they use toxic weed killers on our fields, do you? Like, you know what kind they use, whether they're,
I mean, everything's approved, and the chemicals that we do use are similar chemicals that other schools use, colleges, and all their equipment as well. All their
approved by who? And who regulates the regulators? The
Well,
chemical companies,
we
so.
contract out with a professional company that's licensed, insured, and does all that for us. So yeah, they meet all the state requirements and certifications to keep our kids healthy.
Okay. If you say so. They say so.
On page 19, about 3/4 of the way down, you'll see repairs and maintenance of the building. That's up $35,000. I'll let Chris speak to that.
Yeah, so this line includes some specific repairs to the building and improving electrical and plumbing, et cetera, that goes into it. In addition, this year, we've got $16,000 to flush and dispose of our glycol system, which is part of our heating units, and install a new inhibitor, which is just something we need to do to upgrade. It has never been done in the existing units. We have managed to repair, replace certain parts over the years, but this is something that needs to be done according to one of our vendors, Palmer and Sicard, and they're the folks that come and take care of our HVAC for us. In addition, you'll see, as Jackie had mentioned earlier, there's $8,600 in there for an AC unit for the library. What we found is the library is carpeted and it contains a lot of books, and so the moisture levels are really high in that area. Of course, with the windows, there's a door there as well. In order to preserve the books, to help with the air quality, having an AC, then they would certainly dry it out and create a better air system. This would last longer, it's such a large investment. And our carpeting, quite frankly, we have been looking at replacing it as well, and what that's gonna look like, because it's quite worn. As you can imagine, how many kids are coming in there with shoes, and of course, they're sitting on it also.
That's original, according to this facility plan that is currently being updated, but according to it, that's the original carpet.
In the main office.
From
and in the library.
1996, so, you know, that's seen a lot of traffic.
So we, again, looking at that area as a hub, since all the grades go in there, our staff use it, we do stand-up meetings in there, we do consult meetings, conversations, board meetings, the public uses it quite often as well. We want to preserve it, and so make it something that's useful year-round, within the carpet, brings wear and tear. We think the AC unit will help with that quite a bit. Because it is used all summer long also.
Operation of the plant continues on page 20. And you can see that the supplies, general custodial, we've increased that $3,500 to reflect more of the actuals in the last couple of years. And at the bottom of the page, propane up $9,000, and we've just recently accepted a bid to lock in for the 18-19 year for propane. So we've got that in place, and that's all set.
So do you know something that I don't know about the winter, that propane's going up by that amount?
Well, we've had that discussion, and I actually called Chris Sterndale here at the town hall, and I asked him, see, the tricky part with us bidding either oil or propane out is we're bidding it out 12 to 18 months before. I asked Chris Sterndale what he was bidding, and he bids out as of, I believe it's January 1st, or is it October 1st. So their fiscal year is much different than ours, so when they're bidding it out, it's almost immediate. He bid his out, I believe he's got his for October 1st at 142, and we've been seeing it creep up consistently from that. So obviously either we lock in now at 150 a gallon, or we roll the dice, put a figure in there and cross our fingers and hope it doesn't spike next summer. So, you know, we've locked in and felt that that was the responsible thing to do.
And we had quite a bit of discussion that evening at our school board meeting about this, and you could see there was different opinions about should we wait, should we not wait, and just trying to do the, I guess, the conservative risk-averse thing.
Something to be said for that.
So like, I wasn't here for it, just out of curiosity. If you don't remember, it's not a big deal. But like, what was your propane, was it 3 years ago when you had the killer winter? Was it like crazy more than this in terms of?
We had those
Because it looks
numbers.
like, you know, it's 40, 38, and then 58.
think it was, if you look at we were paying $1.09 with the contract we had prior, and this jumped to $1.50 per gallon. And if you look at the top of page 21, you'll see about 6 years of history of the actuals.
And that could also change, the quantity that we consumed could have changed too
Right.
in those years.
Right, so that's why I was wondering, that really cold one, so there's one that was 71,000. Okay,
But we
Yeah.
could probably look back to past budgets and past reports.
that
to
makes sense.
see what's proposed.
Yeah, we can. It's that's one of those moving targets that I would love to be able to predict that myself.
Right, no, I see now the 71 and the 62.
Yeah.
You know, so it does get up there.
The thing that it does, locking in and being responsible, you know exactly what you're gonna be spending for next year. I think it was probably 8 years ago or so, there were a number of school districts that did not lock in, and then we spiked to $4 a gallon, and school districts were scrambling to find $150,000 in their budget that was unbudgeted, so.
Right.
You know, it always makes me nervous when we don't lock in, because if it spikes,
Right.
we've got to find it someplace in the budget,
Mm-hmm. No, it makes sense.
so.
On an energy topic, have you looked into getting solar panels for the school, or has there been a study on that?
There were some discussions with, I know that Chris Sterndale was looking into the solar panels. There were some discussions about that. We haven't really proceeded to look into it in depth for the school.
Oh, I strongly suggest you move it up to the top of the priority list, because we're in the middle of this climate change, global warming thing. It would be a great lesson and great example for our students to see our town and our schools, like we're doing from town meeting, making an effort to address their future. And it would save you a lot of money on your energy.
Right, one thing we have to research is that we did sign a contract, I think 3 or 4 years ago, that has not gone past yet. Remember that one, where we did the
Yeah.
whole analysis on the school and?
Yeah, we've signed I believe it was when it was PSNH.
Yeah.
They came in and did an energy audit and revamped the lighting system in the school. And we signed a contract with that, which is the savings is going to pay for the initial expense of the project, and now over a series of years, as that's paid off, then we'll start realizing the savings.
Right, and then I think once we get through that, we can start to look toward other things such as solar, but right now I think we're kind of limited.
Yeah, that was
Well,
one of the pieces that we talked about.
Times have changed over the last 5 years. Solar panels are much less costly and are much more effective now than they were even 5 years ago. And they have a break even of 3 years now. You can, or you can do a power purchase agreement where you don't pay anything for it. You get half the electric rates that we're paying, and you have solar energy on your roof. So
That's a good idea.
Things may have changed again, though, because a lot of that was subsidized a few years ago with the schools, and I'm not sure with our current administration that those subsidies are going to remain there.
You don't even need subsidies, are so cheap. Homeowners are getting them, businesses are getting them, 3 to 5 year break even.
But you did have some tax write-offs to help accelerate that, and now I think, that may not be the case. But I think that we are interested in that, it's just that we have this other contractual arrangement that we need to run through and then research that.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea, though.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Also on 21, you'll see under new equipment, an increase of $7,000 there. You can see the note, 2 water bottle filling stations within the school, as well as a small tractor with a snow blower. We've got quite a number of walkways and acreage over there that needs to be cleared for the snow, so that's something we'd like to add. And then toward the middle of that page, replacement of furniture for $7,700, and you can see that there's some lockers in there, as well as some other things that need to be replaced. At the bottom of page 21, elementary school transportation. The bids are out for transportation. They should be back. Originally, we set before our next school board meeting that those would be closed. We need to have a discussion about possibly lengthening that a little bit. I got a call from one company today that said that they might need a little more time, so. But those are out there, and we're hoping that we get some competitive bids back for transportation.
And the realized decrease here is from the midday kindergarten busing, is that what we had discussed last time?
Right, with Rosalind, yeah,
Yeah.
if we do, which we are planning to do, the full day K, then we won't have those midday runs. So you'll have that upside.
Which would be what, the 39,000? For the midday run?
Yeah, that's 3 buses, we only have,
Down at the bottom, it says midday kindergarten has been reduced. It was 12,627 per bus times 1.03% equals $13,000 times 3 buses for 39,000.
So doing midday, or doing full-day kindergarten would save the full $39,000, or just the one?
And typically you
It is
see that
the
when you
three
go for,
buses, okay.
when you go for full-day kindergarten, you see the, more increased costs for another teacher, more paras.
Right.
Luckily Nottingham already has 2 full-time kindergarten teachers because you have 2 sessions. Most other schools, they only have 1 kindergarten teacher, so then we have to increase their budget by 1 more and another para.
Right,
So typically you see that, and then you see the savings for the transportation.
gotcha.
so we've actually got 3 buses for the kindergarten run. Oh, okay, I thought we had 2.
On page 22, at the top, you'll see the addition of homeless transportation elementary. In the past couple of years, we have had situations where we've needed to provide transportation for homeless, and we've been taking it out of the special ed transportation lines, which really doesn't fit. So we're just better identifying it. We took a sum of money out of the special ed transportation lines and put it in this line, and if we need it for homeless transportation, that's where it would come out of.
I'm not sure I understand, I hope I don't understand what that means. What do you mean by homeless transportation?
If a student is deemed homeless, there is an obligation to transport, so oftentimes it's shared between 2 communities, so it
I mean,
depends.
what is homeless for a child? That's my question.
There's quite a lengthy definition about homeless. You can
Okay.
be truly homeless, not have a home and be living in a car or someplace else. If you don't have permanent housing, that's deemed homeless. At the high school level, sometimes it's referred to couch surfing. If you're living with friends, you're homeless, you don't have a permanent residence.
Okay.
We've got other situations where a parent might be living with their child at either a friend's house or a relative's house, and if it's not a permanent residence, they're deemed homeless as well.
Okay.
So
So not literally in the street?
it doesn't necessarily have to mean on the street.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Huge help for a lot of those families.
Our obligation, our legal obligation is to make sure they can continue to be served by our district.
Correct. And oftentimes, it's a conversation, these type of situations are often not cut and dried. So they may have been living in Newmarket and have ties in Nottingham and go back and forth, and oftentimes it's a shared responsibility between the 2 districts. So,
Okay, thank you.
we try to work with the families to make sure that the students are in school.
And we're still responsible, let's say it's a Nottingham student and they end up living perhaps with a friend or a grandparent or something in another town, then Nottingham pays.
We're obligated for the transportation. So that's why that's in there. Special education, transportation, elementary, you can see there's a decrease, excuse me, of $44,000. That's based on need as well. And then at the bottom of that page, moving into your food service. Questions on 22? '23 continues your food service. You see that we increased the supplies, $3,000. I believe that's just, can you speak to that? I think that we did that because there was a change from the food, some of the things that we were paying out of the food and milk now need to be paid out of the supply line, is that correct?
Nope. sorry. The supplies are just for supplies for the paper goods, plasticware, cleaning products, everything that they need in there to keep the cafeteria clean and up to standards with the state. What I have separated out is, you will see there's the food and milk line that is now $64,000. And below that, I put a food and milk non-program for $1,000. So we are subject at the SAU to be reviewed by the Department of Education in regards to our food service programs. We typically get selected, one of the schools gets selected once every 3 years. Stratford was selected last year, and one of the new things that they decided to break out is your extra foods that they tend to sell, like your donuts in the morning that are packaged, your chips, your water, stuff like that. That is not considered to be free and reduced allowable as a cost, whereas the other food costs are, so they are now requiring us to break that out. You do not see it there for fiscal year 17-18 because the review happened after the budget season had already passed last year. So we are seeing expenses incurred in that line because the cafeteria directors within all 3 school districts are now to break those costs out, because we addressed it immediately after they had told us that. So that's what that is.
And your food service totals, you can see those at the end of page 23. Excuse me. Page 24 goes on to your tuition. Again, you can, the tuition for all of the Dover and Co-Brown, you can see the corresponding numbers here. You can see that we've got an increase of students going to your high schools, which is quite a substantial increase in cost. And like I said in the beginning, we literally keep track of your enrollment and the students moving in and out right up to the last draft of your budget, and we'll adjust it accordingly. Down at the bottom of the page, tuition anticipated move-ins. We have 2 anticipated move-ins. Remember, every student that moves into district has, at the high school level, has to be tuitioned out. So obviously there's, if we have to budget something for those, or we have nowhere in our budget to cover those. One of the things that we did do is you notice that we have 2 homeschool students in 8th grade. So we made phone calls to those families and asked them if they anticipate registering in high school or remaining in homeschool. And they've said to us that they are going to remain in homeschool, so we can take $32,000 out of the budget for that. Now, obviously, they could access, they still have the right to access high school at any point in time, but we feel more comfortable if we call them and ask them and anticipate it and budget accordingly. So we've got $32,000 that will be coming out of that line.
And right now, we're estimating those tuition rates. We should have Co-Brown though in probably this month.
December typically.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're hearing early December for that.
Okay. And we should note that based on our contract, this coming year, for this budget, we will not have a discount. We had the multiple year of
Correct.
discount with our contract, but we'll now be at the full price there.
And one thing to note, I'm sure you folks probably saw this, the Co-Brown tuition, the 24% increase, there's also 20 more students being accounted for in the budget for that year compared to what's currently there. So that's a 13% projected increase in number of students. So it's not that the tuition is going up 24% by any means.
Those 20 students, that's 16,000, is 320,000 of that, so that's still another 220,000 increase. That's the increase for losing the discount, 220,000?
We're gonna have to, I think when we get the numbers, I've
So we
actually
gotta
got a
find it.
spreadsheet sheet started, and we'll go through all of that, and get the number, compare it to the discounted rates, and just lay it all out.
Yeah, so these aren't final numbers.
Some of that you can see is a corresponding decrease at Dover.
Right.
Because we're down $111,000 at Dover, so it depends on where the students go. You know, some of it is like Jackie said, an increase of 20 students, and some of it is a shifting of your population between one school or another.
Right, because right now, I think we're looking at, I think the numbers are here, right, 64 at Dover and 151 at Co-Brown.
Oh, 171, oh, for next
Well,
year.
right now,
Sorry,
currently.
yeah, sorry.
So it's somewhere around like a 70%, 30% ratio between Dover and Co-Brown. So when I took the new enrollment figures for next year, I just budgeted it off that what we currently have. However, that could be changing next year with Dover's new building that they have over there. There might be some more programs that, you know, the students here in Nottingham would like to take over there, so. But there may be more savings, but currently I'm just budgeting for what your current percentage rates are.
We did think about too, once the discounts in the contract were no longer, that it could look like a larger increase. We still did get the benefit of those discounts for the first 2 years.
Right, so they're typically only raising things about 3% or a little bit less, but our increase will look larger because we're coming off of a 2.5% or 3% decrease. So, you know, you'll, at the end of the day, you will, we've still had those breaks, and I think one of them
Still
around
realize
like
those savings.
55,000 a year, but it's gonna look like a bigger increase than normal because we had a decreased rate.
So Jackie, the plus 20 students that you mentioned for Co-Brown does not take into account the decrease in students that, for Dover, from that 111,000? So it's 20 more students above and beyond?
Well, I think, I was trying to mention that it's 20 students for next year compared to this year. So there's 20 more students that are anticipated going to Co-Brown compared to the current enrollment.
Right, so in that note for tuition Co-Brown, it says current enrollment is 151 students. I'm subtracting the 23 seniors, but with that 70-30% ratio from your 8th graders, I'm projecting an extra 43 incoming freshmen from that 8th grade class. So that's going to give you 171 students. Whereas if you look up above at the Dover note, the current enrollment is 64 less 24, but I'm estimating 18 students to Dover. So the 18 and the 43 is what your current 8th grade.
And so their net is 54, which is decreased, so you've got one minus 10 and the other plus 20, which,
Because you're gonna see that in the next few years too, because if you look at your 10th, 11th, and 12th grade enrollment right now, you're looking at 50, 55, 56 kids, and then you look at your 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and you're looking at 5th grade, 69, 63 in 6th grade, 65 in 7th grade, 61 in 8th grade. So as some of your slightly smaller classes age out of high school, your slightly larger classes in 6th, 7th, and 8th are gonna be moving in there, so you're gonna see some tuition increases.
Because of more students.
Because of more
Because
students.
of more students.
Right.
Because there are some larger bubbles, some larger classes are coming out compared to some other class sizes for high school. Just said Dr. Dubsky.
On page 25, you've got your special education tuition, and again, you've got other public high schools down 38,000, Dover down 38,000, Co-Brown up slightly, and this is just based on needs of your students in those particular schools.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, I know nothing about this, but does Nottingham have the option of having their own high school built?
You would have to go through a process. Yes, you have the option to do that. Right now, you've got tuition contracts with Dover, and you've got tuition contracts with Co-Brown Northwood Academy. If you were planning on doing that, obviously, you know, the planning process and selling the bond and everything else would take a number of years, probably almost the length of your tuition contracts. And then when those tuition contracts are up, you certainly could do that.
I mean, is there, and I assume that a break-even analysis has been done in terms of the number of students that would be needed for it to be more efficient to have your own high school than to do what's being done now?
Well, we haven't done an analysis per se. You know, if you're building a high school, I know that the renovations in I believe the new high school that they're putting on Dover is $93 million, something like that.
Right.
So the cost is going up rapidly.
Yeah, that's a lot of money either way.
But there's currently no building aid, and we have only, I think, 200, slightly over 200 students, so that's really not, when we had talked about this at the board level, 500 was a number that was spoken about as
So we're
being.
not close.
We're not quite
Okay.
there with the total enrollment
That's really what I
numbers.
was wondering.
Right, so you'd have to build a school, and then you'd have to staff it up, and the
Yeah.
high schools would need, there are requirements for fields, so it would be an expensive endeavor for 218.
Right.
I think
Right.
we'd have to go with other communities in order to maybe get a high school that could be a return on investment, and also maybe offer the opportunities for the children that we would want, because sometimes the smaller high schools may not always have as many opportunities, or a school that small, you might not be able to fund all the things that your children might want to take advantage of.
Yeah.
Right.
So I
And
think-
sometimes it's not sustainable either when you get some of these small high schools. I know Pittsfield's going through this right now where their enrollment's dropping and they're questioning whether they can actually sustain a high school or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Which is always, when you're in that kind of 300 to 500 range, if you have some years where your population drops slightly, then you're questioning whether, not only the course offerings, which are very difficult to offer, but really sustaining the high school itself.
Okay, thank you.
Wasn't there some talk a couple years ago with, something with Barrington and that kind of thing?
There was I know that we had some very informal discussions
Yeah.
looking at middle school kids to see if they would
Yeah.
be open to that. The high school, if there was high school discussions, I know that there's always rumblings about, Barrington and Stratford and Nottingham or some kind of combination, building a school, really nothing serious in the last 5 years anyway. I don't know what predates.
We did talk to Barrington because they had some extra space in their middle school.
Right.
But they saw that they had some increases in their lower grades that they thought would move up and take those spaces, so we couldn't do that. We talked to them about transportation too, sharing, and that wasn't really feasible. Deerfield was talked about some years ago, about 10, 15 years ago. So, and I know that in the SAU that we're in currently, I think Northwood and Stratford are particularly pleased with their relationship with Co-Brown at this point. So there doesn't seem to be.
Northwood and Stratford have both been with Co-Brown for decades.
Yeah. Yeah. But, and having had the high school information nights the last 2 weeks or whatever, talking to some parents I know up in Barrington, they love the fact that they have multiple choices.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of parents here love the fact that we have multiple choices.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece for your kids, because it gives them the opportunity. You've got two very different educational settings. You've got the large high school of Dover, which has a wealth of course offerings and the Career Tech Center, and some people thrive in that large school. They've got things like football and some co-curriculars. And then you've got the small school, kind of traditional Co-Brown, who a lot of kids thrive in that setting because everybody knows everybody. You can't hide. You're always being attended to, and that's a very successful piece for a lot of kids. So it's a really nice opportunity and a nice choice for
Seems great.
for the kids in Nottingham, or families in Nottingham. On page 25, finishing off the special ed tuition, like I said, and any questions on 25? '26 is the high school transportation. I already spoke to that. The RFP is out and we'll get the bids in. You can see under total high school costs, the budget is up $401,000. And a good portion of that could be, attributed to 20 more students. 20 students times $15,000 is quite a sum of money. So you can see that in the total of the budget. And again, this is a moving target at this point because we've still got some numbers that need to come in here. But you can see that the budget is up, with this budget, up 6.24%. We've started initial work on the default budget. We've still got, obviously, the SAU, the preschool, those things, the transportation that needs to go in there. But it looks like the default budget is gonna be in the vicinity of up 4.2% or so. Obviously, that's the new collective bargaining agreements that are in there, that are a good portion of that increase. So as we get the final numbers done, I'll tighten up the default budget and we'll get that to you so you can see that as well.
Quick question on 25 and 26 is the high school speech therapy. Is that based on student need? There's a significant jump there from 1,500 to 9,000.
It is based on student need.
It's based on students transferring over from our school to whatever high school they're going
Yep,
to.
and I think that actually may be a split fee too between the three towns. I believe Stratford pays a portion of it and Northwood pays a portion of it, so it's kind of split equally between the needs that are needed at Co-Brown with the amount of students from each town.
I'm wondering, could we just go over the 70 there, so just everyone is on the same page as to what that is, that's below the line?
Sure, so, to get a better accounting for the total percentage, we have now separated out the transfer to capital reserve funds, so that is not included in there. That is typically your textbook capital reserve accounts, your building repair capital reserve accounts.
So those are the items that were on the warrant, and items that could be placed in the budget, such as the CBAs are in there. But we didn't want to elevate the budget by these capital reserve amounts.
Right.
Because that, you know,
Because it
it
will
gives
throw
us
off
another
your
70,000 that we're not really, so we're trying to be straightforward with that. So these are just the capital reserve accounts that are dropped below the lines that were funded,
Right.
that affected, had tax impact, but are not pushed into the budget.
They flew in and out of the budget, they weren't part of our original operating budget.
Right.
So we don't include them there, because we have an extra $70,000 to.
That people voted on, and it does have a tax, it did have a tax impact, but to push it into the budget, you know, really, it's a capital reserve account, it's not really an operating budget item, so.
I have a question just about presentation. I think this is a different placement in the budget than we've seen high school before, and I like it. It's nice to be able to separate that out because it's not discretionary. But is that kind of permanently how it's gonna be
So
in the budget documents going forward? Is that, because it's kind of not labeled general fund?
So the reason why I did that was, one, because of breaking out the capital reserve accounts. Two, I thought it would be easier for the school board to review, because when they review their financial statements, it is broken out between elementary versus high school.
Okay.
So for them, looking at one report on your expense side and then trying to find that same corresponding number, but not broken out the same way, it could lead to a lot of confusion and a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
So trying to find the 2,700, which is now on page 26 for the high school, would typically be on page 25 or 24 of their financial statements. So it would just help everybody flow. I noticed that last year, but the easiest way to break it out was because of the transfer to the capital reserve. It was
Jen, do you think it's logical for your books?
Oh, definitely, because it's nice to take that chunk out and separate, you know, I guess what we're paying high schools versus what's Nottingham school. So yeah, I think it's great. It's just very different than what we've seen before, so.
And another reason for that too is, when I do my end of year state of New Hampshire reports that are due to the Department of Education, they actually make us break out the elementary piece versus the high school piece. So years ago, a couple years ago now, we had actually started breaking out the account lines that said tuition elementary, tuition high school. So that way I could, instead of going through a year's full of reports for all the districts, it's clear and cut now.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. It's easier to understand and to kind of figure out where the movement is. So, I like it.
We've had a lot of questions in other districts too about that, because, I mean, when we develop a budget, you've got a K-12 budget, but really the K-8 is what we have control over.
Exactly.
I mean, we can add supplies and equipment and things like that. The high school, a lot of times, are fixed costs when you tuition students out. You've got transportation, you've got special education, you've got tuition. So if you look at that, I mean, $4.2 million of that, of your total budget is,
Yeah.
I mean, basically no control over what that number is, so.
Yeah.
It just clarifies it a little bit.
Yeah, it's over half the increase too, so it's another, I think, good reason to have it split out. Because
Right,
it
exactly.
helps explain that 6% number.
Right.
The Nottingham taxpayers can blame the other high schools in the other towns, not our Nottingham school.
Well, another good point is, one of the other school districts last year, over the summer, they had 16 students move in. So looking at that last year budget season and trying to explain to them why their tuition costs had increased so much for one of the schools was because at the end of the year, we ended up being about $250,000 short in the high school expenses just for those 16 students that moved in. And unfortunately, that's one of the things that we see here with having Co-Brown, which is such a great school. It's a draw for people to be moving in when their kids want to go to high school. So, makes it hard for budgeting when, you know, all of a sudden you're $250,000 short, and unfortunately, that's gotta come out of your K through 8.
And that is one of the luxuries of having your own high school, like you were talking about, because if you get 15 kids move in, it just filters into your school, it filters into your budget, and you know, you don't really have to increase anything, but when you're tuitioning students out, 15 kids move in, you know, that's a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, it's a very different model between the K through 8 versus the high school. You don't
It
have your
really
own
is,
facility.
it really is.
Yeah.
So we hope this clarifies it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it definitely does.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that first pass through. More to come, I'm sure, and we'll all get a chance to dig through it. General school updates.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered it. We are working on, I think it'll be a process, but we're looking at the facility plan, which right now we can use to determine, you know, how old certain things are, and we have a lot of aging components to the school. The other piece that I think I wanted to talk to you about a little bit, you talked about full day K at the last meeting, and you feel comfortable with that information and how we decided by vote to move forward at the board level, rather than place a warrant on the, to vote, because we have space. We think we have space to handle that. We also undertook a building analysis, which we had a presentation on. We will be looking at it in depth at our next meeting, and then at that point, I think we would be circulating it. That's our intention, I believe. So we had the school facility and educational programming assessed, and we also have some projections going forward, which we'll see how they play out. Technology plan is currently underway, and that will be coming forward as well. So I think that's about it.
The assessment is available to
Right now, we did receive it. We're going to be looking at it. I think it's available. CIP has it.
It is a public document.
Yeah, we can definitely.
It is, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we could put it on the website or something.
We wanted to, yeah, so I just want to make you aware that that's available. It did cover a lot of material, and it's something that I think you would find interesting here. But it is looking at things like world language, like the 21st century skills, the science labs, and so forth, and trying to determine how to best use our space to deliver some of the programming that kids today require and need in order to be successful in high school and beyond. So we're doing our best to understand the current configuration of our school and how best to leverage it in every way possible, and what it may mean going down the road in terms of space in that school.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you. If you guys were just gonna go into town business and approval of minutes and so on, so you don't have to sit through that if you don't want to. Thank you for joining us tonight and for presenting the budget. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Trickles from the top down.
You know, there's one more thing too, Jessica, this, I don't know if anyone's interested in it, the Kidder Law Conference, this details all the new laws that came into effect that can impact revenue going forward. It's got the Keno law in there. It's talking about paying for private schools and so forth and what that may mean. So this is all broken out. I can send you a link to it if you're interested.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Okay.
So we don't need to pass Keno in Nottingham in order to fund our kindergarten?
No, but it is interesting because they
Good.
basically said they passed 257 new bills were enacted, and almost every one of them, we have some sort of policy change. A lot of additional funding can be needed as a result, so, and some things are going away in terms of revenue, so it's good to know what's happening with that.
Do you know how many towns did pass the Keno Garden?
I don't.
I know several did. What a way to fund, what an example to their students. You know, we want your parents to gamble more so we can pay for your education. Next thing you know, they'll be selling alcohol on the highway.
No.
Enough out of me.
General town updates. Tony.
All right, I don't have too much for you. I think you remember last time Chris reviewed the third quarter town numbers, and we're pretty much on schedule for on budget for where we should be at this time of year. Right now, we're in the process of starting to harvest our departmental budgets for the year ahead, so that we'll be able to present our proposed budget soon. You may remember that I mentioned previously that we had hired a new public works director and then lost him like a week later because of a previously undiscovered medical issue, and he had to decline the job, which was a big loss to us because he was a really great guy, and we were looking forward to working with him. So what we're doing for this winter is we're actually looking at getting a term contract in place, with some local providers for plowing and other services over the winter, while our highway guys are, short a director. And that'll make sure that the town is covered for the winter, particularly, focusing on storms and, sanding and salting. Somebody to make, decisions specific to that, so that way there's no gaps in service over the winter. So we're working on that right now. And what else? I think we talked with the police and fire chief at our last meeting. Our public safety units are fully staffed and in good shape. Hoping to keep it that way. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this time.
Thank you. Moving on to the approval of minutes from October 19th.
Was I at that meeting?
Were you at that meeting? I think so.
Yeah, I seem to remember being there, but.
Oh, but you're not on the list.
I have a template that I just kind of utilize, and I
Yeah.
haven't done it yet, so I just did it tonight.
Okay. I read through it earlier, so line 10, completed. It says the last word in the sentence should be completed.
Okay.
And then line 14 through 16. I was having not all work for Shim and Seal Road work was completed, given the extra repair and salary expenses already seen and the potential need for snow plowing in the next couple of months, and the town is ready for upcoming snow season.
So the intent was the shim and seal road work account was underspent to account for the extra funds needed in the repair lines and the salary lines.
For the repair of the grader or the,
Right.
yeah.
We had a lot of equipment that needed repaired this year, so what they
So they robbed Peter to pay Paul kind of thing.
pretty much,
Okay.
yeah, and the salary, it's more not staff salary, but the fact that we had contractors and so much snow in the January, March
Yeah.
timeframe, it ate up a lot of that, so I can clarify that better.
Yeah, I mean, just to show that, I guess So what you're saying is not all the money in the shim and seal coat category was spent because it was used in different categories, and somehow it needs to, I don't know, it went on and I couldn't understand it.
I know what I meant.
I followed it. Line 38, meeting and expects to.
Yeah. And expects to, question mark.
Oh,
There's something missing there, like another sentence or something.
they'll put period after meeting and cross out.
Yeah.
Expects
Yeah.
to.
Line 54, programming schedules. It says schedule, I think it just needs, schedule needs an S on it. And then line 79, where Chair Haddock officially welcomed Mr. White and Mr. Thompson.
Did Chris get you guys an answer about the
I was just gonna ask
clarification on those?
I didn't get
on
anything on
the,
that.
yeah,
I, just from office chatter, I know there were some issues determined with the postage expenses. It appeared like they were doubled in that third quarter financial report. I think he's still working with Betsy to try to get those amounts correct. I'm not entirely sure how that happened. But I'll ask him a bit about the building inspector.
that's all I've got.
Mr. Chairman, you remember a discussion about town hall asbestos issue, and it was explained to me that it was, the selectmen said it was too expensive to remediate. So I'd like that to be in the minutes. I think that's an important point.
I think there was more to it than that. I think that was just Tony's initial response to that.
That was my understanding of it, but
And we can just
I
delete it
haven't
from the minutes, but.
So you're saying it's not in the minutes?
No, I don't see it. So, once again, I was shocked. I still am.
Because from again, being in the office, I know that there's more to it than that. And so by putting that comment in the minutes, it's misleading to people that the decision is that they just didn't want to deal with it because there wasn't any money. And that there's more to it than that.
Would you feel comfortable if your question, could you represent his question?
Yes.
I mean, it should be reflective, and it should be reflective of what was
yeah,
raised.
yeah, you could absolutely put that there's a question about asbestos remediation in the building and that more information is needed.
And,
Yeah.
yeah.
gonna think of a motion to form a subcommittee to look into it, but if we wanna just, get more information, that's fine too.
I think that would be a question better brought to the board, because it's more of an operational issue for the town hall. It's not just a budgetary issue. I mean, there would be a budgetary item attached to it, but researching that topic is a task for the selectmen, not for the budget committee. You know what I mean?
And people
At least
who
that's
work
my-
here are comfortable that that area is sealed off and there's no way for that asbestos contamination to come into the rest of the air shafts or the air quality be affected anyway.
Well, there's nothing going on back there, so there's nothing to disturb the asbestos. So as long as it's not disturbed, it's not an issue. So that's where it becomes a problem, is once you decide that you need to disturb it, you need to remediate it or remove it, then it becomes an extremely costly process, because then you risk the chance of making it airborne, and typically they tend to soak the place, keep it under spray, water, whatever, and have to bag it and triple bag it and do whatever they need to do to get rid of the stuff. So right now, that end of the building, as sad as it is not used at all. And there's nothing going on in there that would disturb the asbestos that's back there.
Don't know if they've ever wrapped it or done any remedial
I don't
treatment
know.
of any sort at all.
I've only been a selectman for a few months, so I don't know the whole history behind it.
I think it's a big deal about nothing,
But if we could just
Yeah.
put it in, so that it can be addressed by the select board and
Yeah.
see, what's been done in the past.
Heaven forbid, what would happen if it caught fire, the building caught
Yeah.
fire?
Well, the asbestos wouldn't burn. It's fireproofing
What
material.
would it be?
But yeah, it would
Within the air.
absolutely agitate the, yeah.
Okay,
All right.
do a summary for you guys about what
There you go.
the status of the back half of the building.
That would be great.
Yeah, I definitely recommend just get that on the board's agenda so that will be talked about by the board as a whole, That's the way to get movement on that. Yeah.
It is unfortunate to see that much space go to waste, but
So you do know that there'd be an additional cost if you intended to expand or renovate or whatever, you definitely have to budget for that.
Yeah,
But once again, there's a lot of grant money available to deal with environmental hazards, and so once again, once we decided what it was and what the problem was, if it's a problem, how much it costs, and we go after
Yeah.
grants and ways of addressing it.
yeah.
Back to the minutes.
all right, do I have a motion to accept the minutes or approve the minutes as amended?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from October 19th as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any other business that anybody wants to address?
Just had one more quick question about this solar energy idea for the schools. Now, that's probably not up to us as a budget committee, but is there a process to get that more of a priority, or is that just left up to the school committee? Should I go to a school committee meeting and address it?
I would say you'd probably want to bring that to the school board, because that's an operational thing for the school board itself. The focus of the budget committee is just for the monetary aspect of it, should the school board decide to pursue it.
We are having our facilities, maintenance plan and so forth updated. So, I mean, I think it's definitely on the horizon for us. But again, that one contract, I think, until that runs out, sort of ties us up a little bit. But it is something definitely we've discussed in our interest in pursuing at some point.
That said, the town signed the contract with Revision for the solar panels here and at the fire station, and they've already had the engineers up in the attic space checking the structural integrity of it, to see if it can take the weight and the snow load and so on, and it's looking good so far. That's the last report we got from Chris.
Excellent.
There was he said there was no additional structural reinforcement required. Chris, when he was talking about the engineers from Revision checking out the building.
Right,
Yeah.
I think they, according to them, the buildings are fine, and they'll be moving ahead with the installation process, however that's gonna go.
And we also have our CIP that we're working on, and we have spot holders, placeholders in the CIP for a new roof, and we're looking at our HVAC systems as well. So I think once we can get some of these, the roof straightened out that's original to the building, then you can kind of make these next steps, so.
Now, the engineer approval is for town hall, or is it for both locations?
It's
Fire
both,
station and,
we're moving on both, yeah. I think they're gonna start here first.
Do you just go back to the grid, or do you have your own, will you have your own, battery power, if you will?
It'll be sort of a net, like a net metering thing, it'll backfill.
So it'll backfill,
And Revision like pays us a set rate for that power.
so if you don't use all the power that you generate, then it goes back to the grid and you get a break on your billing.
I believe so. I mean, I don't think we'll ever be in that position, but,
You never know.
yeah, you never know.
there's a lot of roof up there.
It's still a long, you know, a long-term savings for the town, so. You know, assuming the net metering laws don't change, because that would change the financial balance, but as of right now, as far as I know, there's nothing up in Concord to change that.
Anybody have anything else they want to bring to the table?
Well, I've had a couple of capital improvement meetings,
Okay.
and I think I'll summarize at the next budget committee meeting, because last time we met with the fire chief, and he detailed the new fire truck, and how he is, you know, gearing that up against other equipment needs, and he put on a very great presentation. And then Monday, we are going to the school to look at what you folks have for options and plans, and I think I'll summarize everything.
That would be
Both of
great.
those.
Excellent.
Yeah, we'll work it on the
Can we
spreadsheet.
add that
Yeah.
to the schedule for our next meeting, please? Anybody else?
One quick thing I have on the school side that I don't know that we kind of talked through the curriculum piece, and we talked about the summer institute and so forth, but we did make a personnel change about 3 years ago now. We hired a curriculum director, so we do have a very high-level curriculum director at the school that has a science background. Jude, yeah, so he's got master's degrees in biology, and he's had experience K-12. He's taught science, he's been a principal at schools, so he's really taking lead on that curriculum piece, and that's been pretty important, I think, to the results that we're seeing. So he works all summer with the team, and they're implementing, you know, a lot of these standards and so forth and curriculum changes. I think that it's helped us greatly to have that kind of coordination.
It made it sound I was at the Co-Brown informational night last night, and they made it sound he was there. And they introduced him and made it sound like he works closely with Co-Brown and their offerings in order to make sure that the kids are lined up to move into that
Right.
you know, curriculum that they've got over there, so.
Yeah, he has the whole K-8 piece here, and then he also does that bridge work, if you will, into both high schools. So he visits with them, he looks at what we're assessing how our kids are doing, because our kids go into two totally different environments, and we don't want them to have any deficits, if you will, in their skill sets. So he's looking at that, and we're doing everything we can locally to shore up those skill sets for our kids, so that the transition is less stressful for them. But yeah, he's pretty well liked at the high schools as well.
Oh, the kids all seem to like him too.
Yes.
That's huge.
And standards are going up, right?
The Smarter Balanced Assessment, this is our third year with it. Our first year, I think we were ranked around 55. Last year, we dropped about 10 spots, but this year we came back, so we're back up. It's out of 200, over almost 300 schools, so we're up around number 55 right now. So a lot of changes have been made, but he's been able to coordinate a lot of those curriculum changes, and I have a lot of confidence in what we're doing in the school right now for our kids.
I have to say, I enjoyed the enthusiasm of the four people here tonight. They're clearly dedicated, and they're into it, and they're on top of it, and I was very impressed.
Very passionate.
Even with the solar panel omission. I won't give it up, but I'll table it for now.
All right. Round table, and anybody have anything else that they want to just address?
Is there anything you wanted me to research for the next meeting, or any questions you had that you'd like data on?
I had one, trying to digest the technology piece. I don't know if it's feasible, obviously, without causing anybody a ton of work, but is it possible to break it out by like what's monthly subscriptions versus what's maybe new equipment? Just trying to get like a different view of what that total, because there's a lot of investments and I think it's great. I'm having a hard time understanding where is something new being purchased versus kind of what's maintenance for our existing, you know, software subscriptions and internet hosting and, you know, all the bandwidth and everything. Just trying to look at that.
Come into our updated facility plan where we'll have an actual inventory of everything that we have, but I think, correct me if I'm hitting it here, I was kind of thinking we almost need an overarching schematic of our infrastructure and what it's going to require moving forward, and then you get into, hey, what technology are you infusing in the school? And I think you always want to be careful, maybe this is just me, but I don't really like the idea of just buying technology and toys and throwing it into classrooms and going to video. We want those teachers, we want this to be augmenting and enhancing, not the whole piece. So, you know, what's it going to be for, are you, so the whole schematic overview?
Yeah, just I guess a different way to digest the numbers and what the impact is. Like, you know, what's kind of being added to our existing portfolio versus what's cost to keep the lights on for what we already have. And yeah, and like you said, how do the pieces fit together? Because the hardware and the software and the networking, I mean, those all need to work in tandem.
Yeah,
and
I'd like to
I'm
break
not a
out the
technology person by any means, but you just, I guess, a different way to understand the numbers and kind of the impact.
If I came back with something that kind of broke out technology, infrastructure, routers, you know, local area
Hardware
network,
versus the
security
software.
systems, hardware, software, and then the academic
Service
piece.
agreements, subscriptions, you know, monthly subscriptions, annual subscriptions, like a firewall, for example. There's the hardware piece of
The
it.
router
And then there's the security software and the support agreement for the annual updates, and then there's any other peripheral subscriptions that might go along with it, such as, you know, antivirus or
Security piece.
vulnerability scanning, or, you know,
Yep.
yeah, there's a lot of elements to that one line item that you
Yeah.
could break out in more
Yeah.
detail.
Well, and I think, yeah, to your point too, I mean, they were talking about, they've done 7th and 8th grade now, with Chromebooks, so all those kids have their own, laptops, which is fantastic. Adding 6th grade, what is the fixed cost, and what is, you know, you're gonna have, obviously your internet bandwidth is not gonna change when you add another, you know, 20, 40, 60, whatever laptops, or however many kids are in that grade, because they wanna go to that 100 megabits, which is supposed to handle everybody and then some. So breaking it out to, you know, what are, like you said, your monthly subscriptions or your annual fixed costs, and then your one-time fees, the one-time fee of buying a cart, the one-time fee of buying a laptop.
And I was curious as to exactly how many devices they were buying and what they would cost per device, and I don't know how much we want to micromanage that. And I had a few questions about what type of grants have they approached Bill Gates and some of these other big computer companies, but, you know, once again, I assume they're doing all that anyway, so, you know.
Yeah, they actually went through a really detailed, what do you want to call it, like a research plan, when that whole effort was started. And I was working with Kevin Smith then at the time on looking at different models of computer and you know, warranty term support agreements, things like that, and it was fairly in-depth.
There's probably people on the school board asking those questions too, so.
Oh, yeah. No, and the Chromebooks are a great thing, because really, it's, all it is a piece of hardware, with internet capabilities, and then as far as the software is concerned, it's all up there. You're not updating, when they do an update, it's done at Google, and it's automatically, the kids have the latest software, they have the latest update and upgrade and so on, and they're all working on the same platform, so you're not worried about, one kid getting a laptop one year, and then the next year they're on Windows 10, or they're on, XP or whatever. It's all on the same platform, which is really great. And I know my daughter uses it now, and I was amazed. She had to do a presentation, uploaded it to her Google Drive, and from home. And next thing, she had it in class, and it's neat.
They can work together and share documents, and I'm the rep to the technology committee, so I'm working on helping them work on the technology plan. But yeah, I hear it, and I also know at the SAU level we're doing it, and it's an expense, and I keep asking, please document. There's probably a better word for it than schematic. That's what I've always used. I want to see what we have in infrastructure and how it's laid out. Where are the routers? Where are the repeaters? Where is all the hardware? What do we have? So that when you're looking to add to it, you know what you're doing. And you've got the cycles of when you need to replace things too. So
Right. Sort of like almost like a CIP plan for that technology.
Another thing you should include in this new technology plan is a life cycle management plan, which I don't think we instituted in the last one, but you have to plan for the expected lifespan of any given device, be it a Chromebook or a router or a server. You have to plan for the lifespan of that, and then so you can budget for equipment replacements on that set schedule. And it will, I've got the life cycle plan for the the UNH police. I have it worked out through 2024. So I know what I'm going to spend 6 years from now.
right, barring
Assuming
things,
assuming 3% interest per year. It's a ballpark, but it gives me something to work with.
but your inventory.
It
And
certainly helps minimize the impact on the community.
Yeah.
okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. And last but not least,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.